Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chicago Autism Network's virtual parent workshops. Tonight, we are really excited to have with us Olivia Banks and Jessica Gruber from the Place for Children with Autism, and I will turn the time over to them.
All right, I am just getting myself set up here to share my screen. All right, thank you everyone for having us. My name is Jessica Gruber, and this is my colleague Olivia Banks, and we are very excited to be here to be talking about promoting desirable behavior within the classroom. So first, to introduce myself again, my name is Jessica. I am the Chief Clinical Officer at the Place for Children with Autism. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I was certified in 2014. I've been with the Place for Children since we opened in 2017, and I recently finished my PhD in applied behavior analysis. I'm also a mom of two girls, an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. And this is my colleague, Olivia.
Hi, my name is Olivia Banks. I'm our Associate Clinical Director. I am also board certified behavior analyst, and I became certified in 2016 and have been with the place since 2019. And I'm excited to talk to you guys today. Okay, the Place for Children with Autism, if you're not familiar with us, we are a center-based ABA therapy company. We have 15 locations across Chicagoland and Central Illinois. We primarily service children who are between the ages of 2 and about 6, sometimes 7, and our therapy services are insurance funded. Right now, we have about 45 to 50 behavior analysts and around 285 to 300 clients who come to our centers to get therapy every day. Okay, so today our agenda, we're going to start with reviewing some basic ABA concepts, including ABCs and functions of behavior. And then we'll dive into some approaches to shaping behavior in the classroom with some antecedent interventions, or you might hear us call them proactive strategies. And then we would like there to be some time at the end for question and answer as well.
Okay, so we're going to start with some basic foundational concepts in applied behavior analysis. So in ABA, our goal is to help make a socially significant impact on the children and families that we work with. So tonight we want to start an overview of a few different concepts that we utilize within our daily practice, the ABCs of ABA and functions of behavior. We know tonight is a mixed group of attendees from caregivers and parents, as well as teachers. So for some of you, this may be a review. For others, this may be brand new information. So we're going to provide a high-level overview of these concepts to serve, to support you to create a supportive environment for your individual learners. So understanding what occurs within your child's environment will be essential to promoting desirable behavior across all settings, whether that's in the home, in the community, or in the classroom. So across any situation, becoming an observer of your environment will help give you the tools needed to best support your child or your learner. So thinking about behavior, this could be any behavior. This could be eating, communication, raising your hand, brushing your teeth, crying, kind of anything that your learner is doing is being considered a behavior. So some of these behaviors we want to see continue, and then maybe other behaviors we want to influence to potentially decrease in different settings or discontinue. So observing what occurs before and after, right before and right after a behavior will help us to understand why is that behavior potentially occurring and how we might be best to respond to that behavior to influence it. So starting with the A of our ABCs, this stands for antecedent. So again, it's just a fancy word for what happens immediately before the behavior. So for example, if the teacher says sit down and then the child sits down, the antecedent would be the teacher saying sit down. Another example might be if the teacher asks a question and then the child raises their hand, the antecedent to raising the hand behavior would be the teacher asking a question. The B of the ABCs is the behavior itself that we are looking at. So in those two examples, it would be the child sitting down as the behavior or the child raising their hand as the behavior. And then the C in the ABCs of behavior is the consequence. So this is what occurs immediately after the behavior that we're looking at within the environment. So for example, if the teacher says, raise your hand, child raises their hand, the consequence might be that the teacher calls on them to answer a question. So thinking about what happens before the behavior and then what happens immediately after. So how we respond as caregivers or as teachers or as therapists will potentially impact the future frequency of that behavior, either continuing or stopping in the future. So a couple more examples. So an antecedent, the teacher says, everybody line up for recess. The behavior, students line up at the door. Consequence, the teacher says, great job, class, time to go to recess. Another example, grandma says, iPad is all done. Behavior, child yells. Consequence, grandma says, okay, a few more minutes. So in each example, the child may be learning that this specific behavior often is followed by the same consequence.
Okay, so what Jess reviewed, the ABCs of behavior, when we look at the ABCs over and over again, or we take note of the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence, it can help us determine something we call the function of the behavior. So when we're talking about a function of a behavior, what we really mean is, how does this behavior serve this person? Or what does this person who is behaving, what do they want? What are they trying to access? What does this behavior result in, or what does it cause to happen? It's the best way to think about it is it's the why behind a behavior. And in behavior analysis, we put those into 4 buckets, and they're colored here: blue, green, orange, and pink. So moving from the left to the right, we will start with escape or avoid. We would call this escape or avoidance function. What that means is it's a person who is engaging in a behavior to make something stop, to get out of some sort of activity or task, or to leave a setting that they don't enjoy. So it's to escape, like physically escape, or avoid something that they don't enjoy more often than not. Not all escape or avoidance behavior is a behavior we want to stop. So it's a good thing to point out here is we're going to talk about some challenging behavior, perhaps, that we might want to shape, but there are healthy behaviors in each of these functions as well. So escape or avoidance is furthest to the left. If you go in and you check the green clipboard, we have one that says gain attention from adults or peers, so from people around you. We sometimes phrase this as attention maintained behavior. Those are behaviors that when the person engages in them, they are getting some sort of social interaction with a person as a result of it. So an attention maintained behavior might be saying hello to someone because they say hello back to you. Okay, and then we move on to gaining activity or objects. The technical term for this is tangibly maintained, but we can call it gaining activity or objects as a function. And what this means is a person engages in behavior to gain access to something they can hold in their hands or an activity that they really enjoy. So a behavior like this might be requesting a toy from a peer. I want to play with the car next, and the peer hands it over. They engage in that behavior, they gain access to the tangible item, the toy. And furthest to the right, we have the pink clipboard that says sensory input. So sensory input could be escape from too much stimulation, lights, sounds, etc. And so you might engage in a sensory maintained behavior to help kind of cope with too much stimulation, or it could also be kind of the inverse to gain more sensory stimulation. These behaviors often look like hand flapping or kind of repetitive motion, but there are a wide array of sensory maintained behaviors. And we consider that to be our 4th function of behavior. Knowing the why behind a behavior can really help you learn how to react. And that's kind of what we're going to talk through. We call that behavior analysis a function-based intervention. I think it's important to note that you don't have to be aware of or know that you're engaging in a behavior for a certain reason. People engage in all kinds of behaviors and they don't know why, and that's okay. Some behaviors can also occur for 2 functions at the same time. So you might be trying to escape something that you don't enjoy while also trying to gain attention from someone else at the same time. That's okay. When we approach behavior from this kind of angle, we're able to remove any sort of blame or shame, anything from the context, and really just look at it from a really objective standpoint and look more simply at what the function might be so that we can figure out how to help someone learn a new or a different behavior that might serve them the same way. It might serve the same function, but just in a more effective way, a better way to ask someone for what you want or whatever it is.
Okay, so I know in this context is a little bit hard to play an actual game, but alongside at your home, feel free to play along and say out loud to yourself or think in your head the response, and then we'll go over it together. So taking into account everything we just learned about functions of behavior, also the ABCs of behavior, given this example, what might be the function of behavior? And keeping in mind, like Olivia said, that many behaviors serve multi-functions, but we're just going kind of high level, basic, given the information here, what might be the function. So in this example, Joe has a tantrum anytime his teacher asks him to clean up his art project. In this example, his teacher ends up cleaning up the art project herself following the tantrum. So what might be the function here is escape. So in this example, Joe might be engaging in the tantrum so he doesn't have to clean up the art project, because maybe in the past he yells and screams and the art teacher says, okay, go line up, and she doesn't make him clean up the mess. So he might be learning, oh, I'm just going to scream when I don't want to clean up my art project. Okay. Next example.
Okay, in this example, Mary sees Sam playing with the blocks. Mary hits Sam and Sam cries and runs away. And Mary then begins playing with the blocks because Sam left. What might the function be here? If you guessed access, I see people in the chat, good job. If you guessed access, you were right. Access to tangibles.
I cannot see the chat, so you can man that, Olivia. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Next scenario, during circle time, Malcolm yells and his teacher says, Malcolm, no yelling in class. The next day, Malcolm yells again during circle time. What might be the function? Attention.
You guys are on a roll.
Yes, awesome job. So one common misunderstanding is that sometimes people think, well, in this example, the teacher, it was a negative response by saying no yelling in class, but seeking attention doesn't have to mean positive attention. It can mean any form of attention coming towards that child, whether it be negative or positive, for lack of a better term.
Okay. Monica hums the Blippi song to herself during circle time each day. What might the function be here? Yes, very good guesses. Sensory, excellent. Yes, that is more than likely the function.
Awesome job. Thank you guys for playing along with that. Okay, so a little review on our ABCs and functions. So we learned that an antecedent is what occurs immediately in the environment before the behavior of interest that we're looking at. We learned that a consequence is the action or event that immediately follows the behavior that may impact the future frequency of the behavior. And this is important as the caregiver or the teacher. So we can observe our own behavior as well to determine how we may be influencing the behavior of our learners, of our children. So in summary, become an observer of your student or your child's environment. It's going to help give you the tools to learn how to influence the environment and influence that behavior. Another main takeaway is that two children may engage in the exact same behavior for very different reasons. And like Olivia said, we want to take any sort of emotion or putting our own context on the situation out of it and really just look at the environment and what's happening before and what's happening after to help us know what to do next. And lastly, understanding the function or the why behind the behavior is going to help you determine what to do next. So this is going to help you maybe adjust your perspective, react with reason, and then create a plan of action for your learners in your classrooms or in your home.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna discuss some ways that you can shape behavior using antecedent interventions or proactive strategies that are function-based. And before we dive into examples, I wanted us to quickly review what an antecedent intervention is one more time. So again, if I call it a proactive strategy, that's what I'm talking about, antecedent intervention. Antecedent interventions change the environment. We want to alter the environment before challenging behavior occurs, before whatever behavior we're talking about occurs. What the child sees, they hear, they smell, they taste, they touch. That's what's going on in the environment that might make a behavior less likely to occur or a different behavior more likely to occur. So this is before anything happens, what can we do to the environment that might make something more likely or less likely to happen? And in ABA, our approach is similar to the quote on the right-hand side. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. We might adjust the soil, change how much water we use, move to different sunlight to help the flower bloom. Okay, so one of our first antecedent strategies is providing choices. Providing choices is a really great strategy to kind of fold into your own habits each on a daily basis. Research shows that people are overall happier and live more enjoyable life when they feel they have a sense of control over their environment, and choices can offer that for you. They provide decrease the likelihood of escape maintained challenging behavior. So that's what we were talking about earlier with engaging behavior to maybe get out of a task or an activity that you might not enjoy, get away from something you don't enjoy. So that's research backed that shows that escape or avoidance behaviors are less likely in environments where a person has more choices over what goes on. And just overall, and we're going to get into some more details on choices, but choices can be incorporated into your everyday activities, even small choices. Something like, which color t-shirt do you want to wear this morning, can make a huge difference for someone. So here are some examples of antecedent choices. Providing choices in the order of activities is one thing you could offer to your learners. This is often used when both activities will need to be completed regardless of order. So if it doesn't really matter if we do this first or this first, that's something that you can offer up a choice to. We've got to put all of our winter gear on no matter what before recess. Would you like to put on your gloves first or your hat first? Would you like to put on your scarf first or your hat first? And giving choices in the order of activities. Another option could be providing choices that relate to attributes. So attributes are things like color, shape, the way we describe things like adjectives. So do you want to sit in the red chair at circle time or the blue chair? Would you like to sit next to this friend or that friend? Would you like to carry this or that to the next class? Giving things that might seem more insignificant to you and I can feel really enjoyable to get to have some control over, even if it feels really small, like a small choice. It's still fun to get to choose. As well, you could provide choices in reinforcer or different types of activities. So when we finish work, what do you want to do next? Do you want to work and then play Legos? Do you want to work and then do bubbles? What do you want to do after lunch? What do you want to do after school today? Those kind of things. It's important to note that some learners may respond better with the physical items present. Sometimes making choices looks different between different learners. And consider just get in the habit now of practicing and considering what you can be flexible on in any activity. Like what has to stay the same versus what could you provide choices over? Recess is over. Would you like to walk or skip back to the classroom, for example?
Okay, our next antecedent strategy is visual support. So I know this is very commonly used in lots of classrooms today. So there are lots of different benefits to using visual supports. They provide structure and routine. So if you think about the visual supports that we all use in our everyday lives, it's no different. You know, we have planners, we have calendars, to-do lists, cookbooks, maps, signs. We use visual supports all day, every day. It's the same for our learners in the classroom and in the home. They may help children process or retain information. So some of our learners have a harder time processing just auditory information. So pairing that with a visual support allows them to kind of understand what's being asked of them or what to do next, and then also may help them to retain the information. So if they're able to pair what is being asked with a visual, they may be able to then visualize the next step of the sequence based on that visual support in front of them, which also may lead to increased independence with the task. So our goal with our learners in ABA and in the classroom and in the home setting is we want to help our kiddos be as independent as possible, so they don't need to rely on us to tell them what to do next. Visual supports are a great tool to promote that independence. For many of our learners, visual supports will also help to increase communication. So again, some of our learners have a harder time with what we call in ABA expressive communication. So providing them with a visual support or a tool to express their needs may help them be more independent with their communication, which may also lead to reduced frustration. So if they're able to get their needs met by utilizing visual supports or visual communication, often that will lead to less frustration, which will often lead to less disruptive behavior in the classroom. Excuse me. Some examples of visual supports. We have what are called PECS books, stands for Picture Exchange Communication System, or visual icons, visual picture icons. That's that blue book right here. We also have choice boards. So that's when we present a visual array of items or a textual list of items that a learner may want to work for, or they may want to choose to do next in their daily schedule. That picture is here where it says I choose on the right. Another example is a visual schedule. So this can be used for things such as adaptive routines like going potty. So for some of our learners, they may be independent in some of the tasks, but they may have a harder time remembering what comes next. So providing them with a visual support might remind them, okay, I need to grab the toilet paper, and then I need to wipe my bottom, and then I need to put it in the potty, and then I need to flush it. So it kind of helps them move through the independence of that task. Another awesome visual support is a first then board that's pictured in the top right. And then here's one more example of a visual schedule on the bottom right, where it just lists out the daily activities. We often see these in classrooms, so kids know that, well, after morning work, we're going to move to math, then we're going to move to silent reading. Visual schedules can be as kind of generic as you need them to be, or they can be as specific. So you could have a visual schedule that just says morning work that works for one learner, but for another learner, they may need the morning work to be broken down into each individual step of what does morning work look like. So instead of morning work, for some learners, it might say, pull out your workbook, turn to page 3, get your pen. And that's all inclusive of morning work, which might be enough for a different learner. So you can individualize these visual supports to your learners' needs to promote that independence, increase communication, and hopefully reduce frustration. A couple of tips for using visual supports in the classroom is that some learners do better with actual pictures of the items rather than a cartoon or drawn version that you can find online. So for some of our learners at the place, we will take actual pictures of their toys or the foods they eat or their activities or their work area, rather than, again, using like a board maker or an online picture of a generic desk or toy. Visual supports can be textual or they can be pictures. So some of our learners who have the ability to read, just like many of us in our day-to-day, they could write out to say morning work, math. Other learners might need the picture of the activity paired with the text, and others might just need a picture. So all of this is individualized to the learner. And then for some of our learners, it's best to start with a small field of pictures and then work your way up. So presenting a choice board with 2 pictures rather than presenting them 8 choices, sometimes that's too much visual stimuli. So you might want to start small and then work your way up over time. Okay. Next antecedent strategy is the PREMAC principle. This is commonly referred to within ABA, and something maybe you guys have also heard is grandma's rule, or first then, or the high P, low P sequence. This comes from the idea of maybe a grandma saying, well, first you need to eat your peas and then you get your dessert. That's kind of where the grandma's rule comes from. But in this principle, it states that a person is more likely to perform a less preferred activity if they're able to gain access to a highly preferred activity right after. So again, the example of first you need to eat your peas, then you get dessert. Or first we're going to do math, and then you get to do go to recess. So this is a commonly used antecedent strategy to promote desirable behavior, which is following through with maybe the lesser preferred activity. The visual support that I put on the previous page, that first then, is a very common use within ABA, and again within the classroom, can be used at home as well. I do use this a lot with my own daughters when it comes to like nighttime routines. You know, first we need to brush our teeth, then we can watch a little TV before bed. And typically that works pretty well. Usually it's presented as a vocal statement and then potentially paired with a visual for some of our learners as well.
Okay, we are going to talk a bit about reinforcement as an antecedent strategy, but let's review a little bit about what we mean when we're talking about reinforcement. So reinforcement means an interaction with another person or the environment that immediately follows a behavior that increases the future frequency of the behavior. So reinforcement looks different for everyone. Jess, will you click? Thank you. Reinforcement increases desired behaviors if the person values that consequence or values, we would call it that reinforcer. So that interaction that follows the behavior, if it's valuable, person likes it, wants it again, that's going to increase the future frequency of that behavior. It's going to make it happen again. And reinforcement can also help decrease other maybe less desirable or unwanted behaviors because the person can learn that the reinforcer that they really like is delivered for a different behavior. So if I get to have my ice cream after I eat peas and I don't get to have ice cream if I throw the peas across the floor, what it can do is help the child learn, if I eat my peas, I get my ice cream. If I throw my peas, I don't get my ice cream. They can get to learn that relationship between all of it. Okay, so some examples, potential examples of reinforcement here are verbal praise. Here's some just kind of generic examples of praise statements. We're going to dive more into praise in a minute, but that's one example. Tangible items, these could be toys, snacks, things that your learner really enjoys. Some tangibles could be things like tokens. So these are things that can be kind of saved up and then exchanged for other things. This could be points, stickers, marbles. This example here has one of those jars where you kind of add things into it until you get to a certain point, you get to earn something. These could also be activities. Activities are reinforcing too. Some people really like to sing or dance or be line leader or teacher's helper or whatever it is. Activities can be reinforcers too. So kind of on the last slide or two, when Jess was describing the PREMAC principle, the then of it all could be an activity that someone enjoys. The only way to know if something is a reinforcer is if the behavior then occurs more in the future. Okay. So proactively, we can use positive reinforcers like we just reviewed to increase the behaviors we want to see again or see more of. But there are some tips here. Verbal praise may not function as a reinforcer for all people right away. What that means is if I say, great job, or I really liked that you did that, or I'm so proud of you for doing X, Y, Z, it may not increase the future frequency of behavior yet for everyone, and that is okay. But that's not something that has to stay that way. When you provide praise in a way that a person enjoys, that could be quietly, it could be using thumbs up or gestures, it could be alone away from other people, or it could be out in front of the class. There are many learners that really like public praise. That's a thing. Some people really don't like that. So getting to know your learners well enough to know what type of praise they really enjoy can help you find praise that can be reinforcing. And especially if you provide praise and attention at the same time as other reinforcers or rewards, your praise becomes more valuable when you do that. So the more enjoyable things that you begin to associate yourself with, associate your praise with, the more meaningful your relationship becomes. Strong, positive relationships yield more positive behavior. So if you get to know your learner really well, you get to know what they like, how they like to be interacted with, and you do fun and enjoyable activities with them, it means that more positive behaviors are more likely to happen in the future. People tend to be more willing to try new or even difficult things when they're asked by a person they have a strong, trusting relationship with. And you get to that strong, trusting relationship by being caring, praising behaviors that you see, acknowledging, providing attention in the way that they like. Praise is the most renewable resource you have. It doesn't cost anything, and it takes a very brief amount of time to deliver, and not a whole lot of planning. So just use it intentionally and abundantly, meaning provide praise, attention, and it doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing unless that's what that person really likes. Good job, way to go, awesome, you did amazing. Drop it in there when you see a behavior that you really enjoy. And these are some examples here. I think I screenshotted this from the Council for Exceptional Children's website. I'm pretty sure they have a whole comprehensive list, because if you want to keep it fresh and exciting, use different phrases, say, acknowledge different things, find different behaviors that you really want to praise. And it can help, again, kind of strengthen that relationship. Okay. So again, some more tips on antecedent strategies with reinforcement. There's something called non-contingent reinforcement, which means delivering reinforcement or praise, or it could be tangibles like we were talking about on the other page, when there isn't challenging behavior going on. So this could be if if it's kind of like busy and loud in the room that you're in, you could set a timer for yourself, even like every 5 minutes. I'm going to set a timer, I'm going to have it go off, and I'm just going to look around and see what good stuff is going on to acknowledge. Give out a token at the time, give out a point at that time, give out some praise at that time. It could also be just taking a moment to provide some attention for people, because time between can be something that can bring out challenging behavior. If I've gone a really long time without any sort of reinforcement, I might try to gain access to it myself. And I might always, if I'm a learner, might not always know how to do that in the most appropriate way. So if you, as the teacher or caregiver or therapist, pick and choose some times that are kind of in between there, keep that schedule dense. Reinforcing desirable behaviors often is a big tip here. You want reinforcement or praise or tangible reinforcers to outweigh correction or challenging behavior. You want more reinforcement available in the environment than not. There's always something to reward, even if it feels really, really small, even if that small thing is just a little bit less challenging behavior than the last time we did that really hard thing, or even if it was maybe the child didn't, or the person didn't ask for something in the most perfect way, but they asked this time and last time they didn't ask at all. They had maybe a really hard time with it. That's something to acknowledge and to celebrate. So find the small things to reward and reinforce. Using reinforcement contingencies like first then, that PREMAC principle, helping our learners learn the relationship between the behaviors we're trying to reinforce and the reinforcer. When I do this, when I do A, it gets me B. That's a really great thing to learn in the world, right? That's how a lot of us navigate the world. And then another thing kind of that you can use as an antecedent strategy can be individual or group reinforcement contingencies. Individual token boards, group behavior contests like that jar with the tokens inside of it we showed on the last slide. It shows a visual representation of how much behavior is needed to earn a reward. Sometimes, again, we're kind of combining a couple things here, but every time you drop a token or a marble or what have you in that jar, that's a reinforcer. And then a note on withholding reinforcement: try your best not to deliver big reinforcers like toys or snacks or big praise when challenging behavior is occurring, to help reduce them in the future. This doesn't mean by any means ignoring a person when they're having a difficult time. That's definitely not what we're suggesting here. But maybe if the example I gave earlier, if the child throws the peas across the floor, I wouldn't immediately hand them the bowl of ice cream. I might, say, hey, let's pick one up or pick a couple up, and then we can have our ice cream. Just mentioned this at the top of the presentation, but quote unquote negative attention or like corrective attention can still function as a reinforcer for some people. So try really hard to avoid scolding or any sort of harsh correction, because it may not work the way you think that it will. The picture on the right-hand side, the person shaping, we use this phrase in behavior analysis, shaping behavior, because we're slowly moving behavior towards where it might want to be. it takes time to learn. So don't be discouraged if you provide praise or a reinforcer after a really great behavior and it doesn't immediately improve, within an hour. It might take a couple days or a week or 2 weeks for people to learn a new behavior. That's okay.
Okay, that brings us to our next antecedent strategy for the classroom, and that's effective instructions. So why are effective instructions important? It helps the child to process or retain information, which may help to increase compliance or independence in the classroom, and then again may lead to reduced frustration. So some examples, and not an exhaustive list of examples for effective instructions, include using very clear or concise language. So clear language might be shorter phrases without a bunch of additional details provided. So instead of saying, everybody line up, push in your chairs, walk to the door very quietly, and then we're going to go to recess. For some learners, it might be more effective to say, stand up, line up, or stand up, push in chair, line up. So you're kind of taking away that additional text or audio that might be too much information to process for the learner. Like we talked about on a few previous slides, sometimes pairing visuals with the instruction will help that learner to be more independent. Another clear and effective instruction is being concise. So taking that long instruction, maybe a 3-step instruction, and breaking it down into single-step instructions. So again, instead of saying everybody stand up, push in your chairs, walk to the door quietly, and then line up, you might say to one learner, okay, stand up, great job. Provide that reinforcement that Olivia just talked about. Okay, time to walk to the door, awesome job. All right, line up, and giving that reinforcement after each individual step. An additional antecedent strategy is making sure that you're gaining their attention before you're providing that instruction. So it reduces the competing stimuli. So for some learners, we might need to use their name to gain their attention. For some learners, it might help to use some sort of visual indication that an instruction is going to be provided. I know lots of teachers naturally do this. For some of our learners, it helps to actually put this into the IEP, but it might be, flashing the lights before an instruction is given, or a lot of teachers do the 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, things like that. Those are all antecedent strategies towards helping our learners follow instructions in the classroom. Additional antecedent strategies for effective instructions are using to-do language. So instead of saying no running, we want to say what the child should be doing. So instead of saying no running, we would say walk, please. Or instead of saying no touching, we want to say hands in lap. So we want to use the clear and concise language that we want our learner to engage in, rather using the language we don't want them to engage in. This helps our learners be more independent. Another very important strategy is to make sure that when we provide an instruction that we're ready to follow through with this and with the instruction. And I will say as a parent, this is very hard. So one thing you want to do is if you're going to provide an instruction, you need to either be ready for them to do it independently, or if they're not ready to do it independently, maybe you prompt them through it. So in the classroom or, with my own child, it might say, okay, time to clean up your toys. And maybe they choose not to follow through with that instruction. So if I don't make them follow through with the instruction I provided, they're going to learn they don't have to listen to me. So I might say, okay, time to clean up your toys. And then I will help prompt them through the activity so they learn when mom says, please do the instruction, please clean up, that I have to follow through with it, whether that's independent or prompted. Another antecedent strategy is using behavior-specific reinforcement. So that means that we are going to label the behavior that we see that we want to continue. So great job lining up, instead of saying just great job, or I love how you raised your hand, instead of just saying good job. So again, you want to use the language of what you're seeing that you want to continue. Another example is modeling. So pairing the instruction that you're providing with a model of the desired behavior. So that model can come from you as the caregiver or the teacher. It might come from peers within the classroom. So you might have some helpers in the classroom that serve as a model to their peers. But again, that is providing our learners with an example of what to do, both visually and vocally, that will help them be more independent in the classroom. Okay, our last antecedent intervention that we're going to discuss today is environmental manipulation. Environmental manipulation is just antecedently changing something in the environment to promote the desirable behavior. These are just a few examples of what environmental manipulation might look like. There's lots of different examples. So one of them is environmental enrichment. So that is enhancing the environment with an item or a stimulus that may serve the same function as the competing behavior. So for example, we have learners that maybe sitting in a circle time for more than 2-3 minutes is a little bit difficult in the beginning when they start therapy with us. So sometimes having a stimulus or an item such as putty or a little toy or a little fidget helps them to focus and stay in the circle time a little bit longer. I know this is something that's often written to IEPs that we see a lot. Another example are environmental changes. So sometimes reducing interfering stimuli or stimulus within the environment also is helpful to our learners. So that might be changing the volume by having your learner wear noise canceling headphones. It could be changing the brightness level of the room. It might be putting a film on the fluorescent light. Sometimes that input of stimulus can be overwhelming for our learners, and just making those slight changes antecedently before helps reduce some of the challenging behaviors that we might see in the classroom. Another example might be the presence of peers. So for some learners, they do really well with lots of kids in the classroom. Others might need a smaller ratio. So maybe having only a couple of learners at their table and then slowly working their way up to having more peers within a specific vicinity might be helpful as an environmental change. And then another example is an environmental cue. So this might be an addition of a cue within the classroom or the home setting that may increase the likelihood of a behavior to occur. So we talked a lot about different visual cues that might be helpful, but additional cues might be an alarm or some sort of auditory stimulus that indicates what comes next. I know in some of our centers, we utilize like an Amazon Alexa that is set by time of day to help our learners know when it's time to transition to new activities. So this is a really useful tool, maybe in a classroom or in your home setting, to help your learner or your child be more independent, transitioning from one activity to the next. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the antecedent strategies that we wanted to review today, but we would love to stay on and answer any questions that you have about promoting desirable behavior, functions of behavior, ABCs of behavior, anything that would be useful.